I guess we will get started. We'll continue to admit people as they come in. Morning, everybody. Welcome to Smoke Free's monthly roundtable meeting. We're very excited today to have Dr. Minji Kim from USC to speak. So I'm Barbara Derrick. I'm the Executive Director for Smoke Free USC, and I'm going to turn it over to our Community Engagement Coordinator, Tara Bell, to start.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Friday morning. Beth Johnson, our ACS CAN Government Relations Director, usually joins us these monthly meetings, but she is traveling today in DC, so she's not able to join us. But she did just want me to remind everyone, if you're working on the smoke-free Greer efforts, to continue, pushing that effort, talking to people, garnering support. If you don't know, we're trying to implement a smoke-free policy in Greer.
Join the meeting.
So if you know anyone in Greer, if you have connections in Greer, we'd love to chat with you to see how we can use those to help our policy get implemented. And then we're also always looking for other areas, other communities to implement smoke-free policies throughout the state as well. So if you know one and you want to work in one, reach out to us and we can get that process started. So today's meeting, as always, will be recorded. We'll post it on our YouTube channel and on our website later next week, so you can keep an eye out for it. You're welcome to share it, copy it, send it to people. We're very thankful you're here, and we're also very thankful for Dr. Minji Kim to be here as well. I am going to pass it over to her to let her introduce herself and then to get the presentation started.
Hello, my name is Minji Kim. I'm an assistant professor at USC's Arnold School of Public Health, Department of Health Promotion, Education, and Behavior, or HPB, as we like to call it. So I come from health communication background. I have done research in targeted and tailored health communication in the area of tobacco control, mostly tobacco control. Some of my other research also touches on COVID-19 vaccination and testing among underserved Asian American communities in California, where I did my postdoctoral research. But today I'm going to talk about e-cigarette advertisement and how tobacco industry is using psychographic targeting, and I will talk more about that. And let me start with a slideshow. Okay, can everyone see things well? Great. Okay, so hello everyone again. I am very happy to present today with Smoke Free SC about my research on psychographically targeted e-cigarette advertisements. So why do I do this research? The goal of my research is, of course, first to understand how tobacco marketing and promotional messages may detrimentally impact our young people. But also at the same time, as a communication and health promotion researcher, I want you to just learn from the best people, the geniuses in our discipline, proven through multiple decades and multiple product types, the tobacco industry and their marketers. So you are seeing examples from historical, pretty old cigarette ads to jewel ads shown near the Times Square in New York to a hip hop music video created, dedicated for a heated tobacco product in South Korea that recorded more than 1 million views on YouTube because they were able to post it without any age restriction, because heated tobacco product is kind of like a hybrid between e-cigarette and combustible cigarette, and then they usually use a heating elements that doesn't include tobacco leaf. So they are just showing off the device part without the nicotine or tobacco, and then they were not categorized as tobacco promotion. So they were able to post this video on YouTube without any age restriction until the government realized this was tobacco ad, after outcry from the academia and then other health public authorities. So they took it down or more added the age restriction, but before that, the tobacco industry was able to create 1 million imprints until a lot of people, including young people, by circumventing the loophole in the, like, if you will, in the policy. So my goal is to learn from these geniuses, the tobacco industry, to fight them back by developing more effective counter-marketing messages to prevent initiation and promote cessation. So before I proceed any further, a shout out to my wonderful collaborators from California, from UC San Francisco, where I did my postdoctoral research at the Center for Tobacco Control Research and Education, or CTCRE, and the Rescue Agency, as well as funding support from National Institutes of Health and FDA. I also know a few people may be familiar with Rescue Agency because they have been also working with the DHEC in South Carolina to develop and disseminate anti-vaping social media programs for youth. So let me talk a little bit about targeted and tailored communication. I know a lot of people will probably know the basics, but it's good to start from a same page. So there are a lot of strategies people use to engage audience and persuade them to make attitudinal and behavioral changes. Among them, I am particularly interested in targeted and tailored health communication, where the unique characteristics of the target audience is used in designing and delivering the message that we believe the designers or the message developers believe is the most effective and appropriate for them. So for example, let's say here's a company that wants to promote their bottled water. They may design an ad targeting female customers or another version for male customers and then deliver it appropriately. And this is using the customer's gender or sex to create a message that we believe will best serve them. So then let's say we want to reach out to this diverse bunch of young adults with tobacco-related messages, of course, prevention or intervention messages, given who we are. We all heard the phrase, one size does not fit all in communication. The key of targeted communication is audience segmentation, understanding the characteristics of the target audience and group them into smaller groups accordingly so that the messages can be modified to better fit the intended subgroup. But the key question is what to group the audience with. So we can try using gender, male or female, to group these audiences into two larger groups. If we want to go one step further, we can add race to the strategy. And many public health campaigns have taken this route. However, tobacco companies has been successfully engaging in something called psychographic targeting for young adults, studying and classifying people based on their not just demographics, but psychological aspects, such as lifestyles or value systems or social identity. For example, both ads here are for cigarettes, and they feature young white males, but they are actually appealing to very different subgroups. The left one is from Marlboro, and they use more traditional masculinity with rugged male image. Like we all know the Marlboro cowboy images. But on the other hand, the right one is from Camel, and then they portray more refined and urban or modern male images, which is very different from the Marlboro cowboys. And what researchers are seeing is that the tobacco companies' marketing strategies, like using psychographic targeting, have been quite comparable between regular cigarettes from 90s, early 2000s, and e-cigarettes in 2010s and 2020s. Although there are not many research, there are limited research done on the psychographic marketing and counter-marketing strategies in the realm of e-cigarettes. So going back to this group of young adult audience, demographics may not be the most effective way to segment these groups to maximize the message effectiveness, since you can still see quite a lot of diversities going on within any of those four demographic-based groups in terms of the type of life or culture they live through. So different strategy may yield a better segmentation results. Here, I have been focusing on something called peer crowds, peer groups with shared values and interests and lifestyles. So we can measure one's peer crowd identification, especially young people, using an instrument called iBase, which was developed by the rescue agency, where people see an array of photos, something similar, very similar to this that you are seeing. They will be seeing more photos, and then they usually do two sets. One is female photos, and then the other is male photos. And then the participants are usually, the young adults are asked to select pictures that best and least represents their own friend groups. And instead of demographics, let's divide our target audience based on peer crowd. So there are usually largely 6 groups of peer crowds. First is young professional, one of the largest group in the population, or those who value their career and social status, but they would prioritize networking over partying. And mainstream is another large group. Some people call it also homebody. They mainly prefers quiet night at home rather than a loud night out at a bar. If I were a young adult, I would probably a mixture of mainstream and young professional with probably 80% mainstream, I think. And partiers value social status and tend to take great care to their appearances because their clothing and styles are social symbols. Hip-hop peer crowds value strength and respect, likes to present an image of strength and success via their clothing and bravado, mostly coming from urban area. And hipsters are counterculture group and trendsetters who values creativity and individuality. And last but not least, country peer crowds are those who enjoy outdoor activities, value their traditions, and often but not necessarily coming from the rural areas. So you can see now they show quite distinct appearances across these different groups. And these peer crowd groups show quite different patterns of tobacco usage as well. The bars here show the peer crowd smoking prevalence in Bay Area as measured back in 2014. Of course, yes, this is a bit outdated by now, 2023, but this is the most recent one that I can find that is coming from a representative sample, at least representing the young people in a large enough area that reflects the association between peer crowd affiliation or identification and tobacco use. I believe more recent data is coming from the same research team, so I will let's stay tuned to understand better about that. But this data shows quite striking differences across the groups, especially the two on the top, the young professional and mainstream, so-called low-risk groups versus others. Partier, hip-hop, hipster, and country, they tend to be considered as more high-risk groups in terms of tobacco use and other substance use or other health risk behaviors. And e-cigarette marketers are also catering to the different peer crowd groups using their advertisements. For example, this one is featuring a bunch of young professionals focusing on their work, but not forgetting to enjoy their e-cigarettes sitting in their boardroom. And this one features a partier female with fancy dress, updo hair, full makeup, and flirty facial expressions. And so on. There are various types of ads that are catering to these different groups from the based on peer crowds or different lifestyles. Interestingly, this collection of ads were done in 2017 and early 2018. We could not find a suitable country ads from what was available. And I think it is because of the different tobacco usage patterns across the peer crowd groups. So the country peer crowd people show quite high smoking prevalence for regular cigarettes compared to others, as you can see on this bar. But when you go into the e-cigarette, their e-cigarette use rate is not necessarily very high. So, and therefore there are probably not of special interest to the e-cigarette manufacturers, at least at that time when I was collecting the example of advertisements. So, as I mentioned, back in 2017 and 2018, I collected existing e-cigarette advertisements published on print magazines, internet, and social media channels, and wanted to examine how young adults respond to the targeted advertisements the ones that show people that are similar to their peer groups, matching peer crowds, when compared to non-targeted or mismatching, if you will, advertisements. So the first study was a qualitative study involving one-on-one interviews with young adults. 59 young adults from California were recruited via Facebook, Instagram, and Craigslist, and they participated in an interview study. They were all using multiple tobacco products at the time, cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and/or smokeless tobacco based on their past 30-day use. This was part of a larger study of so-called poly-tobacco users in California. So we were limiting the participation on only those who are using multiple tobacco and nicotine products were eligible to participate in this study. During this interview, we showed them a few matching and few mismatching ads based on their peer crowd identification and asked them a few probing questions and invited them to think out loud about what they see and notice from the advertisements and what they think of what they see. And so majority of them were males, and majority of them were hipsters, partiers, and young professionals. The distribution is different from general public because, as I mentioned, like young professionals and mainstream are actually the largest group in the general population, but the distribution is different because we only recruited tobacco users. Therefore, greater representation of the high-risk groups than the general population. There were 7 country participants, and they were assigned to see their second highest peer crowd, second highest scored peer crowd group as their matching ad, because as I mentioned before, we didn't have any country e-cigarette ad to show them as a matching ads. So what I found from the interview. The interviews indicated that people do notice peer crowd related cues in the e-cigarette advertisement really quickly and easily. Those kind of cues could be appearance, such as dress styles and accessories, or the environments and context that can define certain peer crowds, such as bar for partiers, being at home for mainstream people, or in the office for young professionals. Lifestyles, such as enjoying going out versus chilling and relaxing. And some participants were even using their own language to define the groups. Sometimes they were using the same term as we did, hipster, partier, or sometimes slightly different terms such as hippies, yuppies, and so on. And of course, like we made sure that we ask the participants to define what they are saying using their own language to make sure that their version of hipster and our version of hipster are at least very similar, or at least on the similar page. So when asked what are the first few things that they noticed, like the moment they are shown this ads, the first question we asked was, what are the first few things that you noticed from this ad? And these kind of peer crowd related cues were more often mentioned and discussed and described than they noticed other demographic cues such as race, gender, and age. So here are some examples of the excerpts. This is a hipster ad, and then the participant, when asked to describe this ad, including the first things that they noticed from this ad, they were talking about dark room, maybe inside summer cafe or something, and then the appearances, long kind of tangly hair, nose piercing, and he looks like kind of a hippie guy. And then another example, this is a partier ad, and then the participants were noticing the photo booth, and then the party scene, and then goofing around. These kind of cues are often associated with the partier lifestyle. So we used intensity scale coding methods, where 2 coders assigned a quantitative score ranging from 1, strongly dislike, to 6, strongly like, based on the participants' responses to the advertisements. And people tend to like ads showing the same peer crowd as their own than different peer crowd. It's a small difference, which was not necessarily statistically significant, but it is there. And then it could be discerned from the responses qualitatively. So for example, seeing a hipster advertisement showing this person with facial hair and then sunglasses, both male and female hipster participants noticed the matching peer crowd cues, including the dress styles and then appearances, and made pretty favorable comments toward the advertisement. The accessorizing beard, the facial hair, that's something that hipsters are always talking about. It would be kind of cool to be able to walk down the street with that kind of dress. So that was things that people of matching peer crowd were saying, seeing this advertisement. Same goes for hip hop participants. Seeing this ad, a female hip hop participant noticed the brand Obey, which was really popular among the hip hop among her peer groups, and then says that it's kind of a hypey thing for guys to wear. And mainstream participants saw this mainstream ad and mentioned how she looked normal and natural, which is a cue for being a mainstream. Although authenticity is really, really important for the young people, some hipster participants responded negatively to the hipster featuring advertisements that this person is a cliche and not my kind of guy, and even ridiculed these ads by saying so quintessential hipster effing dude. So it is really important that like the perceived, like the fakeness is sensed really quickly, and then a very quick cue to reject the message for young people. As I mentioned earlier, these kind of peer crowd cues were more frequently discussed and mentioned when they were describing the ads and then things they were noticing from the ads, but age was also quite a quick noticeable things for young adults, of course. When shown as showing young, older people, participants, remember all of the participants were under 30 years old, and they mentioned that these ads are not necessarily for them, seeing the old people featured in the advertisement. And this participant, somehow very hilariously, put everyone who's not in early 20s into one group of older people. Adults maybe like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and so on, as something that's not him. So in the follow-up study, follow-up quantitative study that I will talk about very soon, I decided to take out all the older people featuring advertisement and then used only young people, youth model featuring advertisement in the study. I will come back to that really soon. But before that, I want to talk about implications from this qualitative study. What does this mean for tobacco control? I want you to learn from the geniuses in tobacco industry, and I think I learned a lot. So first, I see the hope of using peer crowd as an important targeting criterion for counter marketing messages. Peer crowd cues are salient to young adults, and perhaps it will still be in the anti-tobacco message context. So there are some existing anti-smoking campaigns using peer crowd targeting strategy, and this should be extended to the realm of e-cigarettes, along with rigorous evaluation efforts as well. These are the Fresh Empire from FDA, Fresh Empire targeting hip hop youth, that is mostly talking about menthol cigarettes. And then the right one is Havoc, which is targeting partier young adults. Both of them involved rescue agency. Fresh Empire is sponsored by the FDA. Well, one thing to remember is that it is really, really, really important to achieve authentic portrayal in our effort to prevent initiation and promote cessation. Otherwise, it will be rejected and perhaps ridiculed by the intended target audience members, perhaps especially so for hipsters who value their originality and individuality. It is important to recruit actual members of the target audience, incorporate their ideas and identity into the interventions, and don't forget to rigorously test the messages before widely publishing it with the members from the target audience group to make sure that they resonate with the messages in a way that you actually have intended. Another thing that we may consider in terms of tobacco control is maybe policy should require not to feature youth or young people in tobacco advertisements. Many interviewees clearly mentioned that the ads featuring older adults were not intended for them. So if the tobacco companies claim that they are not targeting adolescents, if these kind of claims are real, they shouldn't be doing this. Use older adults, or even we may even consider banning, we may consider banning using young people or young models, or maybe human models in general, like any human models that may appeal to youth or young people from promotional messages. I think a version of that kind of policy is in effect in Canada. Okay, so following this qualitative study, I designed a quantitative online experimental study to more systematically and empirically examine the impact of psychographic targeting in e-cigarette advertisement, this time recruiting young adults nationwide. So we worked with Qualtrics panel to recruit 2,100. No, actually, we were working with different panel company called Toluna. So we recruited 2,100 young adults. Half of them were current tobacco users using either cigarettes or e-cigarettes or both, and half were non-users based on their past 30-day use. Participants were randomly assigned to view 3 e-cigarette advertisements. Half of the participants were randomly assigned to see ads featuring the same peer crowd as their own, and half of them saw ads featuring a different peer crowd groups. And this was recently published in Nicotine and Tobacco Research earlier this year. So we expected that the peer crowd match will increase the effectiveness of the marketing messages. Let's say we have a hipster vapor as our participant. If assigned to the matching or same peer crowd condition, he would have seen an e-cigarette advertisement featuring another hipster vapor character. And if assigned to a mismatch condition or different peer crowd condition, he would have seen an ad showing one of the non-matching peer crowd, for example, the partier ad shown on this screen right now. And we hypothesized that the matching ad would be more effective for the particular audience because of the similarity featured and the shared lifestyles, resulting in this hipster vapor participant liking the matching advertisement and characters more, and also having more favorable attitude toward e-cigarettes compared to when he would have seen an ad featuring different peer crowd. So some of the results are here. That even though my sample is not representative, random sample, so it's slightly different from what I showed before from California. But the e-cigarette and cigarette use pattern is in some way quite consistent with the 2014 data. In that partier, hip hop, and hipsters, those high-risk groups, show substantially high prevalence of both cigarette and e-cigarette use compared to the young professionals and mainstreams. You can see that young professionals and mainstreams are in high 20%, mid to 20% for both cigarettes and e-cigarettes. But for the high-risk groups, partiers, hip hop, and hipster participants, they were way over 40% based on past 30-day use. One of the key findings was the positive effect of psychographic targeting on liking of the ad character and liking of the ad or ad evaluation were substantially more pronounced among the non-users of tobacco and nicotine products, shown in the red lines here, compared to the current users, which are shown in the blue lines. You can see from the graphs that the reported liking of the character on the left and the ad evaluation scores on the right increase a lot for non-users when comparing different versus same peer crowd. But the movement or difference is not as apparent because the line is like kind of parallel for the current users of tobacco and nicotine products. Tobacco users overall like the advertisement more than the non-users. That's why the blue line is located higher on the graph in general, but they did not show significant effect or differences of seeing either the same or different peer crowd in the ad. On the other hand, the non-users, you can see that their scores, their response to the ads become more favorable when they see the same peer crowd as their own versus different peer crowds. This suggests that non-users who are usually would have considered as lower risk population are actually more susceptible to this kind of psychographic peer crowd-based targeting in e-cigarette marketing messages. So again, what does this mean for tobacco marketing and anti-tobacco communication? First, I continue to believe that peer crowd or other forms of psychographic characteristics should be actively utilized as an important criterion for defining target audience, as we are seeing notable tobacco-related disparities across different peer crowd groups. For the high-risk groups, it is really important to run targeted campaigns to reduce tobacco use rate. But as my data show, like whether just showing matching peer crowd is effective to design a targeted message is not probably sufficient. There needs to be more research about how we can actually create messages that these high-risk group can resonate more. But the fact that they need more targeted or tailored intervention messages to promote cessation among them is pretty clear. However, another more important thing is that we shouldn't forget about the low-risk groups, as the study results suggest that the tobacco non-users, usually having lower risks of using tobacco products, may be particularly vulnerable and susceptible to peer crowd-based targeting in e-cigarette marketing, which is actively happening in the real world. On the other hand, for those who are already using and familiar with tobacco products, maybe seeing another targeted advertisement seems not to have much effect on them. And I think this is really concerning because e-cigarette, because as a result of this, if the otherwise low risk groups start tobacco use initiating with e-cigarettes because they were more susceptible to this kind of targeted marketing messages, we know that e-cigarette use can lead to use of other tobacco products among non-smoking young adults and adolescents in the future who would have otherwise not started using tobacco products at all. So therefore, it is crucial to minimize the low-risk group's exposure to targeted marketing via effective regulatory measures against tobacco promotions, making sure that tobacco promotional messages and especially the psychographically targeted messages designed for young people are not available in the channels that may be accessible by non-tobacco users, tobacco non-users, or low-risk population, or make sure that we continue to do targeted counter-marketing campaigns to prevent initiation of e-cigarettes using public health campaigns targeting the low-risk young adults groups. And that is all that I wanted to talk about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. So now we'll go into time for questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? You can say out loud or put it in the chat, whatever is easiest for you.
I'll go.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi. I want to thank you for your wonderful presentation. It really is a great background for everyone about the peer segmentation. Just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that we do the peer segmentation here in South Carolina with our partners at Rescue Agency, which you mentioned, which is wonderful. And we saw a little bit different of the demographics, but we use the same principles with the campaigns that we run. We do the Behind the Haze, which is the vaping prevention, as well as the Down and Dirty. And so we do have a high rate of smokeless tobacco use among our country males. So we have seen a nice decline in that since we've implemented the campaign. So just wanted to chime in to let everybody know that we are following these same principles that she outlined for South Carolina and to use with the campaigns that we're doing to try to prevent tobacco use among our youth.
That's great. Yeah, so the pictures and the definitions of the peer crowd groups that I showed was mostly applicable to the young adults. So the down and dirty would probably be replicable for the country part. I think like
Right.
Behind the Haze is designed for adolescents, right?
Right. Yes, that's right.
So
And it actually crosses over many of the peer groups. So the partier that we call popular
yeah.
as well. And then our hipsters we call alternative, but the same idea. And they're very much like want the authentic. So they will call it out really quick if they see it. So totally resonate with what you're saying there. Those three groups are our highest groups of e-cigarette users. And we do incorporate the iBase into our youth tobacco survey every year. So we are able to segment the peer groups out based on our YTS. So really, really good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. The difference of the names, I believe that's because Rescue intentionally used different labels for adolescents versus youth, because we don't want popular adolescents partiers, like I guess. So it's the basic principles. And one interesting thing Jeff from Rescue Agency mentioned is that sometimes popular adolescents grow up into young adults group, and then some people stay as partiers, but some people grow up to be young professionals who start valuing their careers more than social life, but they would still enjoy the social life. So
that makes total sense. That's awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned it in the presentation, but who is the governing agency, I guess, who makes decisions based on advertising?
You mean like the regulations for marketing?
Like you mentioned, perhaps banning younger models being used. Like, who makes those decisions?
I think now FDA has the authorizing power, the legal tools, if they can. Yes, Sharon gives a thumbs up.
Okay.
So yeah, because now FDA is governing all the tobacco and nicotine products.
Since it is a tobacco product, they can make those decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, and now e-cigarette is, of course, like part of tobacco products. Even synthetic nicotine or tobacco-free nicotine oral pouches, like the newer products, are now deemed as tobacco products. So FDA has governing power over them too.
Well, that's good, at least, so it doesn't have to go through someone else.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think they've just chosen not to act on it, though.
Right.
They are being careful in some way. Well, I was just at NIH last week. Yes. At NIH in a tobacco regulatory science meeting, and then Brian King from FDA's Center for Tobacco Products was there, and then he promised that they are working on it. They are working on fighting e-cigarettes and other tobacco products. So.
Yeah, I know that Helen Deckel with DHEC has requested that we try and get Brian King to come speak at our summit next year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So we're working on that. Yeah. Any more questions? Dr. Kim, thank you so much. This was so informative. We really appreciate it. It's a great presentation. Great presentation. Does anybody want to tell us anything new that they've been working on, or have anything they want to share to the group?
Everyone's ready for Friday.
I know I am. All right. Well, if nobody has anything, we will see you next. Well, we don't do it in November, do we?
I don't think so. Is it November? December when we don't do it.
Yeah, I think this is we are very fortunate, as Sharon Bigger said in the comments, to have Dr. Kim at USC. Thank you so much. We'll get back with you on when it will be in November, because I know Thanksgiving runs into this
Fourth week. Mhm.
yeah. But we will have it up on our website and send it out in our next newsletter.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim, again. Bye-bye.
Thank you for an opportunity to present to this wonderful group.
We appreciate it.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy Halloween. Couple
Oh,
days.
yeah, happy Halloween. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.